What up, everybody? Yo, yo, yo. I just said that so I can do a sound check. You guys know what I'm doing. Get the show started here in a second. Guess what? I'm already probably an hour behind. I thought I was going to play basketball for the first time in like 2 years. Pick up basketball at the church
What
on
up,
the radio
everybody?
for the first time in like 2 years. That's probably not going to happen. But I am going to go and hang out with my work friends because we're all officially fired. Let's go. Yeah, so we'll talk about that in a sec. Shout out to everybody who's tuned in on Twitch and on YouTube, whatever system you used to check out this lovely TV show. I appreciate every single person, every single look. I will say it seems like I think we gained another follower. I don't know how many people we had before, but I'm pretty sure 11 is one more than we had before. So yeah. Anyway, a guy that I know who was in a coma, like a medically induced coma, for like 6 weeks due to COVID, came out of it today. So shout out to him. Shout out to him. He is a daughter. He's a girl dad. He's got a lot of kids that would have, I would have been sad without him as well too. But his family would have been pretty hard pressed on that one. Sorry, I'm trying to untangle. There we go. There we go. Yeah, you guys would be surprised the shit that's just slightly off camera on this show. On a regular basis. I don't know. I just moved that glass as if it was the only one that was in the way, when in actuality, there's 3 of them right here. Whatever. Anyway, you guys know the deal. We're doing NFL only today. We have not started the podcast yet, which is why we're doing this informal part. But once we get the podcast popping, you guys know the deal. Drop comments or questions in the boxes, buddies. Oh, we got 2 viewers already. What's up? Yeah, talking about NFL only stuff. So if you got anything you wanted to say about your team this past week, some trash talk you wanted to talk about, some other teams from this past week as well. Yeah, anyway. Sorry, I just found out some very, very good news. Anyway, yeah, so if you want to talk some shit or talk about something that's cool that happened this past weekend, because there's a lot of cool stuff that I just flat out can't show you because I don't have the licensing agreement to show NFL highlights, because that costs lots and lots of money, like a lot of money, like thousands of dollars. And while we do that, you guys know the deal. I'm gonna hit it up on putting the social media stuff together on YouTube real quick. I'm sorry, you're hearing the Twitch broadcast. Good to know the microphones are working today. Remember we had that like whole 15-minute fiasco last week? That was fun for everybody. Also, if you haven't noticed, I've been getting my scheduling down pretty good in terms of like getting the tweets out about the show. Been seeing some numbers pick up too, which is good to hear. Just in general, somebody in Alaska consistently listens to the show, and I have no idea who they are. So shout out to you if you're that person. Also, hit me up on Twitter at FB_playbook, or if you're a person that I know in real life, hit me up on there as well. Oh, my bad. Watch live on YouTube. YouTuber. Oh, that's Twitch. Don't do that. Oh, man, this is rough. For some reason, my neighbor is outside right now and having a full-on conversation. So hopefully they don't like start yelling and screaming here pretty soon. That would really suck ass. Remember that one episode where I think somebody called me out on it. Somebody figured out what it was. I was recording the podcast and we had like a video feature, so I had to be close to the window that's over here back in the day, before we got on YouTube and everything like that. But I used to have to be close to the window, and one day I was doing my podcast, and my neighbor just started to cut his grass, like for the entirety of the podcast, and I was just hoping that nobody would be able to hear it on the microphone. I was like, man, I really hope this microphone is good enough to be able to pick up my voice, but also like crappy enough to not be able to pick up that background noise. We live in a different time now, ladies and gents. Yeah, anyway. Broke Boys Sports podcast. Anybody writing anything in the chat? Just trying to make sure. Oh. Yeah, and we got access back to all the Twitter accounts, baby. We were struggling there for a second, but we changed some passwords around. So, Brokewood Sports Podcast. Let's go listen and watch live. Oh, shit. Ampersand. Is that how you say that? By the way, last week, I felt pretty good about some of my takes last week. In particular, the Superman one and the John Gruden one. I saw I Am Athlete, which has been problematic before, but I saw a title that probably, maybe I would like to hope is clickbait, because it was like Chad Johnson talks about the fake outrage against John Gruden's racism and everything like that, and maybe it dives deeper into the fact that there's small racism that goes on every single day in the world that we live in, and there are people who do nothing about it. But once it's like on Front Street, there were still people who were struggling to call it out for what it was, right? And there's a lot of people who were, livid, kind of understandably so, not kind of understandably, but very understandably so, livid about what John Gruden wrote in those emails, because if you are a person who is in a marginalized group, actually majorly marginalized group, I'm not talking about Italians, you know for a fact that hate speech in general leads to people hanging from trees. If you're a black person, that's like almost unique to you in particular, but if you are a person who understands how like hate speech works, why it's important to counteract it as much as you possibly can, why it's important to, and there's people out there who think that you shouldn't try and exile people for hateful things. And it's like, well, if everybody else is like not doing hateful things and you're doing hateful things, you're a part of a group of people that seek to not be a part of what society's norm is. And therefore you are exiling yourself. And it's just more official when, that kind of thing. Anyway, that's a conversation we had. I got a friend who is the same guy who's a anti-vaxxer, who talks about how, very, very much so seems like he voted for a certain person a couple years ago and believes that everything is a lie all the time. So, he's that guy. He's not black, so don't worry. Houston, Texas, podcast. Oh, man. Podcast and chill is trending. I don't know why, but sure, do you. NBA, NFL, NBA. Actually, this is just NFL only. I don't know why I did that. NFL Twitter. I meant to put, and copy and paste that, baby. We're gonna get the popping right now. Copy, send it from the other account, and once we get that going, we're almost done here. You guys know the drill. Out of Quidditch jail coming up here pretty soon. If you don't know my story, I was suspended by the governing body of the U.S. Quidditch earlier in the pandemic because allegedly my team was flouting the rules by practicing without mask, even though it was literally that mask fell down while we were practicing and people struggled to keep them up. Anyway, shout out to everybody for joining here on Twitch. That is, oh God, Jesus. All right, we'll see how this goes. There's an update for Spreaker. Hopefully that doesn't go horribly wrong. That is coming out of the wrong audio source. So there you go. All right. The output should be... Is it my headphones? It is not. Allegedly, y'all can hear that. I don't think that's true. Oh, I love this. This is my favorite thing. Where you update something and it just completely forgets all of your settings. For like no reason whatsoever. Yo. Come on, man. Jesus, dude. Like, this is so dumb. Input. I'm gonna close this before it pisses me off. Sorry, guys. We're working on podcast stuff. The podcasting part of the podcast. What could it be, Ashton? What could it be? Why is all of a sudden everything not working? My favorite. That's my favorite. That's my favorite thing. When things did work and then they don't anymore. Okay. Alright, there we go. We got it. Alright. Y'all know the drill. Hold on a sec. Let's get it popping real quick. Working on that real quick. Broke Boys Sports. I love how we haven't skipped a frame in 3 weeks. We have not skipped a single frame in 3 weeks because, ladies and gents, we are cooking. We're professionals now, kind of. Hold on a sec. Mute myself there. It's the only way I'll be able to see people writing to me in the chat. If you got a better way for me to be able to see who's writing towards to me in the chat, let me know, because I actually would enjoy that very much so, instead of having to have all the windows open. Here. Done. For week 6. Anyway, almost done here. NFL Twitter podcast on YouTube and Houston. Let's go there. Basketball starting up, man. Watched last night. Pretty dope. Feels good to be back. I feel like I said that like 3 months ago about the NBA. Oh, wait, I did. Anyway. Oh, what's up, John? Thanks for tuning in. Boop to you as well. Let's get it. Going live in 3, 2, 1. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls and everybody else in between, I'm Ashton G. Lewis. This is the Broke Boys Sports Podcast where, it's a Wednesday, so there's only one of two things that's happening right now. I've either forgotten the day that these podcasts normally happen, or it's our NFL-only episode. Luckily for you, it's the NFL-only episode for this week. We're covering every single game for Week 6, what it means, what has happened, what has gone right, what has gone horribly wrong for every single team in the NFL, because guess what? I mean, at any given week, if you listen to fans, they're going to the Super Bowl and then they're going to finish 0-16, even if they've already got wins on their record. Some fans still believe they'll finish 0-16 somehow. Anyway, we got a lot to get through, and we're going to get through it very, very quickly. Shout out to everybody who's tuned in on Twitch and on YouTube. And if you're on YouTube, let me... Hold on, let me do it. I got it. Hey, YouTube, what's up? Make sure you like and subscribe, and make sure you also smash that notification bell so you know every time that we go live. Yeah? Am I getting better? That's like our 3rd week here on YouTube, simulcasting on YouTube and on Twitch. In the long run, I'm assuming that means that I won't be able to make money from either one of the platforms if I ever make it big, but don't worry, the $100 million contract is not going to be based off of a platform, guys. That's what the signing bonus is for. Anyway, other stuff we got going on. We got a lot of things to get through here. People already in the chat on YouTube, and there's also people in the chat on Twitch just chilling out there. And if you want to be one of those people, feel free to hop in and talk some shit about the team you hate the most in the NFL. Also, like and subscribe, like I said. Subscribe on Twitch as well. I don't know why that's not a thing, but anyway, let's take it from the top. Actually, taking it from the top means that I got to give you guys an update on the pick'em situation. We got money. We make money line bets. Hold on. Sorry, somebody wrote an email title with the insurrection in the subject, and I know what company that is. Anyway, we got a couple of things going on here, so we're gonna break it down. We make bets on the money line every single week, so every time you hear me give a pick on this show, I actually bet money on it in my app on the unnamed betting app that I use. Anyway, also make picks against the spread. I don't bet on 100% of those, but I bet on most of them for the most part. Anyway, we've been getting pretty good. Week 6, we are, because they cut down the number of games that are available. I think there was only, hold on, let me count it real quick. Absolutely riveting radio. 14 games. So we got 9 out of 14 correct. We only got 5 games wrong last week. I call that pretty damn good. And I think the same thing happened for, hold on, let me check on the spread. So we went 9 for 5. We went 9 and 5 this week, which is an impossible score to get to in the NFL now. But yeah, we also, we went 8 for 14 in terms of picking the spread. I'll live with it. I shouldn't have taken the Texans plus 10.5. The points are too juicy, and the Texans are not that team anymore. But we'll talk about that when we get to it. And let's take it from the top, shall we, ladies and gents? Let's just dive right into it, especially since I need to hurry up and get the hell out of here before I get yelled at by multiple people. I'm going to hang out with my friends who have all been fired from our jobs at Disney, a.k.a. our contracts ended and our department no longer exists because it's been dissolved to avoid antitrust laws and all that kind of stuff like that. We all knew this was coming. A lot of people were at work on the last day of work. Yesterday, I will say I went up to go turn in a piece of equipment that I found out that I could just randomly keep in that the guy who's in charge of everything was like, he's like real chill. He was like, yeah, I just put that in the email so people wouldn't ask to what to do with it. So I went up to work and I got to hang out with some of my people that I know and got a chance to talk to them and stuff like that. That was pretty chill. And what else happened? Oh, on my last day after working at Disney for 10 months, one of the supervisors that I've been working with the entire time that I've been there called me the name of another black employee. So what a great way. And that was the first thing that happened when I stepped on the campus, right? So it's pretty funny. It's funny to me because, like, it's just truly absurd that at this point you don't know my name. But he did call me instead of the other large black man that works at our job or worked at our job. He called me one of the skinnier guys. He called me by their name, and I thought that was funny or whatever. So, and it was interesting. No doubt. And as you can imagine, this was not a black supervisor, and not a supervisor of color either. So it was just really funny. Anyway, don't forget social media stuff, FB_playbook on Twitter, at BrokeBoyPod on Twitter as well. That's the podcast Twitter account. So if you follow there, the only thing that's going to come out is links to the show. So if you want that kind of stuff on your feed all the time so you remember to listen to it, I would appreciate it. Follow it there, and also retweet some of my tweets. So if you want to get my tweets in your feed more frequently, do that as well. My personal Twitter account at the Ashton J. That's where I tweet about my life, like things that are not sports related. Instagram at the Ashton Forever, and that's also the name of my TikTok account, which, by the way, I have not put up the image of the week TikTok in case you were looking for it. So, yeah, it's been a little weird this week. Don't forget, like and subscribe on Twitch at Broke Boy Sports. I have one question before we get started because we take questions from Instagram, Facebook, and on Twitter as well. I just don't tweet it out as frequently on Twitter. But if you write in a question, I will answer it on the show. If you send it to me on any of my social media platforms, it doesn't even have to be like within one of the tweets or the question box that I put in my story on Instagram. You can literally just send me a question, and I will add it to the list, the rundown for the show. I would say I would like for you to keep it within the realm of sports, but I'm also trying to branch out in terms of giving people a bigger and wider breadth of who I am as a person, so random questions are accepted as well. This is one that is staunchly football related, but I guess it determines, this question will let me know how much you understand about football, right? So this is a would you rather question. Square up in an open gap to Derrick Henry running downhill or block Aaron Donald one-on-one. For me, the answer is obvious. I'm gonna give you a couple seconds to think about that, and then I'll tell you what the situation is we got going on. This is obviously a question sparked by the fact that Aaron Donald, quite frankly, is the greatest defensive tackle to ever live in the history of the NFL, and he's not even close to done with his career yet. Derrick Henry is quite possibly one of the best running backs to ever play football, especially in not only in this modern era, but also all time, because he does old school football stuff in the modern game of football. He's also like a genetic freak in the sense that he basically never gets hurt. He used to get hurt early on in his career, and now that's not the case or anything like that. Many people are saying that it's a little too early for Tractor Cheeto season. If you don't know, the Titans fandom and a lot of other people within the realm of sports call Derrick Henry a tractor, because a workhorses get tired. Derrick Henry does not. He just needs to refuel, and then he will continue to plow through defenses for you. So Derrick Henry, they call him Tractorcito because that means little tractor in Spanish. If you're not up to snuff on your Spanish or anything like that. And then blocking Aaron Donald. So I'll give you all that time to think about your answer, and I'll tell you what the obvious answer is here. It's block Aaron Donald 1-on-1. Derrick Henry, let's be for real. I weigh over 300 and what is it? No, it's 350 pounds or something like that. No, it's 340. 347 is what I weigh right now. I probably could mitigate the amount of force that Derrick Henry could exert on my body if we were going head-to-head or anything like that, and kind of mitigate the amount of power that he has. But the smart move is probably to go with Aaron Donald, because you know what Aaron Donald actually doesn't want you to do? Aaron Donald has never been interested in like straight-up bull rushing people. Aaron Donald is very interested in getting around people, because getting around them is faster to getting to the quarterback. So the worst-case scenario that you have to deal with Aaron Donald is that he embarrasses you so badly that your ankles break or something like that, which, by the way, was probably going to happen if you went up against Derrick Henry. He was literally going to break your ankles in the sense that like your legs would probably be shattered from the impact of you touching him. So the actual right answer is Aaron Donald 1-on-1. Moving on. If you have a different answer, hit me up on FB_playbook. And if you got a better answer, hit me up on FB_playbook. We got what's going on, and we move on, ladies and gentlemen, to talk about week 6 of the NFL season. Some teams have found themselves in what many would call a rough spot. I actually root for two of the teams that many would say are in a rough spot right now. But we'll start with Thursday Night Football. I actually recapped it on last week's episode. Last Thursday's episode called Believe, but called Believe. The final score in that one was Buccaneers 28, Eagles 22. This was one of those situations where the Eagles played much better in the second half than they did in the first. The Eagles also continued to refuse to run the ball, which of course means that me personally, I'm done believing that they're actually going to change the way that they operate as a football team. I saw a quote come out from the offensive coordinator of the Eagles talking about how Miles Sanders is a very good running back and that they need to get him the ball more. It's one thing to say, you got to show it to me. We'll see what happens. But they went toe-to-toe. The Eagles defense really stood up in the back half of this game because the Buccaneers were really pulling away the first half of it because the Eagles got suckered into playing their game, right? Like they refused to run the ball. They wanted Jalen Hurts to go out there and try and beat Tom Brady drive for drive, and a lot of it was centered around the Eagles' defensive stance, the defensive approach that they took. They sent the base 4, base 3 pressure, whatever the situation may be, and they operated off of a soft zone, which is something that was on film before. And I don't know if you guys know this or not. Tom Brady's really good at identifying any defense that you run, but the one that you keep running over and over again, he's probably going to figure out a way to burn you even more every single time. And that's kind of what happened in this game. But once again, the Eagles show the potential to be one of the best teams in the NFL, and then come up massively short versus an opponent that they could have had a chance to beat if they had started out the game a little bit better. But as usual, we find ourselves sitting here talking about the Eagles on a losing streak and losing another game. That was really, like I said before, up for grabs if they really wanted to go out there and get it. But, they have a coach who's kind of a clown. So that's going to be a problem for them later on in the season. Well, not later on in the season. That's going to be a problem for them overall. And now the rumors are swirling again about Deshaun Watson possibly getting traded to the Miami Dolphins. Of course, possibly getting traded to the Miami Dolphins. It's whatever. But yeah, bad game for the Eagles. I don't know what to tell you. Once again, like I said before, Miles Sanders is probably a top 10 running back in the NFL right now, but nobody would ever know based off the way this coaching staff treats him. Moving on, let's go to Sunday. Sunday, we had another London game. It was worth it. No, it wasn't. I convinced myself that it's worth it every time that I wake up for these London games. But yeah, I will tell you this much. This is the game that I remember the least about. Now, and I remember vividly a lot of things that happened on Thursday Night Football. And I had to go back and watch the replay of Thursday Night Football because on Thursdays I go to practice with Sam Houston State University's Quidditch team. So I only get to watch up until like the third quarter. So I actually never know who wins Thursday Night Football until I come back home or on my way home and I'm like checking the app and stuff like that, or I'm checking or I'm listening to the radio because I listen to the radio broadcast until I get to Huntsville, Texas, which does not pick up 6:10 a.m., which is the game broadcast channel here in Houston for the Houston Texans, and they also air Thursday Night Football and Monday Night Football. So if you're ever in Houston, 6:10 a.m. is the 6:10 on the AM dial is the channel that you need. That in 790. So yeah. 790 for quality sports talk radio. Anyway, that's what we got here. So Jaguars 23, Dolphins 20 in this one. We predicted the upset damn near perfectly on this. It was basically common sense for us to understand like how this panned out in the long run. We saw what the Dolphins were doing. We saw what the Jaguars are capable of doing. We also saw that the Jaguars are way closer to figuring out who they are as a team than the Dolphins are. The Dolphins are still going out here and slinging that thing. They're still out, and to their credit, they got Tua Tagovailoa back, which is well anticipated in a lot of these situations, and a lot of people were expecting Tua to come back by this time and this point of the season. But the fact of the matter is like Tua definitely played the Dolphins offense a lot better than what Jacoby Brissett was able to put out there overall. And I think that's something, one, Miami Dolphins fans are going to be really happy to see that their starting quarterback is actually significantly better than their backup quarterback right now, mainly because Jacoby Brissett was going out there throwing 50 passes a game, which guess what? Tua almost did too. 48 passes. This is the fourth straight game where the Miami Dolphins have just completely abandoned. And this is weird. They threw 48 passes but ran the ball 20 times for 77 yards. And the game was somehow closer. Who would have thought? But yeah, when it was all said and done, the total yards in this situation, 431 for, so like that's one thing. If you were in fantasy or whatever, you don't need a quarterback who's going to win games. You need a quarterback who's going to get a lot of opportunities, and Tua getting these opportunities, ladies and gentlemen. So if you're one of those people who poo-poos yourself because you think you're too good for Tua Tagovailoa, you don't know how math works, and math means more chances to go out there and sling that thing. And he only came up with 2 touchdowns, but he did throw it in. The interception was like kind of bad. I honestly didn't see who he was throwing the ball to when the interception happened, but hey, what do I know? I'm just a dummy. Anyway, 47 pass attempts for Tua Tagovailoa. They had 1 pass attempt for Jacoby Brissett in there. And when it was all said and done, these two teams kind of went back and forth with each other because guess what? They are in the same place, like as structurally as a franchise. If you look at it across the board, they are very similar in terms of situation, in terms of players who are available. So, or in terms of like where their good players are sitting, right? Like Laviska Shenault has not been like super consistent or anything like that, but when he gets opportunities, he makes plays happen. Same thing with Jacoby Brissett. What is that noise? Anyway, sorry. If you guys know, you have Gatorade bottles. They capture air, and then they slowly leak the air out, and they make this squeaking noise. That's what that was. I fixed it. Don't worry, guys. But yeah, no. Off the situation, man. Like the offensive line blocked significantly better in the course of this game. They only gave up 4 pressures technically, and gave up 0 sacks from Tua, who once again is coming off of a rib injury, and you got to feel like that says something. That's pretty impressive. But for the most part, I picked the Jaguars because they played more like a more efficient football team. They played like they're getting better every single week of the season. They look like they're getting better, guys, and a lot of that has to do with they understand where their bread is buttered, and guess what? That bread is being buttered by none other than James Robinson, the greatest undrafted free agent running back of all time. So that being said, as he continues to get the carries that he deserves, the Jaguars are going to find themselves in position to win games a lot more frequently. This did come down to the final drive of the game that the Dolphins were able to force because they were relentless. By the way, shout out Emmanuel Ogbah, H-Town hold it down, and a dude that I had the lucky opportunity to have on this show one time and talk to him before he got drafted and everything like that, because he went to a school that I used to cover in high school, and he has been balling out of control for the Dolphins this season, man. Relentless at the defensive end position. But yeah, the Jaguars go out here, they get a field goal, and I think the record, it's like the most the first time ever that a kicker has had to kick 2 field goals over 50 yards in distance in the last 4 minutes of a game. If that's not the most like NFL crazy specific stat that there is known to man, I don't know what is. But yeah, shout out on that one. Looks like also the Jaguars, after this game was over, let go of Josh Lambo, who been on IR. They got a kicker who's actually been killing it, the guy who made the 2 50-yard field goals, and they decided to let him go. That was kind of the nail in the coffin. Anyway, moving on. Other games: Bengals versus Lions in this one, 34-11. This is actually the saddest game of the entire week. Let's be for real. Last week we saw Dan Campbell crying, or Dan Campbell showing that passion, that love for the game in his press conference, and it fruited 11 points. So if you don't know, here's the secret to this game. The Lions are still winless, by the way. But the secret to this game is the Lions also did not score until the fourth quarter. So don't let anybody convince you that they went out there and they like, turned it on in the second half, or like they started off well. They scored in the second half after the game had already been decided. At halftime, this game was like 17-0, and then the Bengals, who have been slowly but surely getting significantly better as this season has gone on, not only because of their draft picks, but also the coaching has looked pretty spot on. They've been able to go out there and they've benefited quite well from the immersion of Joe Mixon, who, by the way, he's not putting on that weird season that he had a couple years ago where he had like multiple games where he had less than 10 yards but double-digit carries. But yeah, no, they're getting better slowly but surely, and the Bengalis they came to party, ladies and gents. Sorry to say, the Lions were not invited to the party. It was, I guess they were invited to the party. They were just the piñata. Yeah, this one was a tough one, and this may be, last week may have been the heartbreak game. You know what I mean? The game that kind of mentally breaks everybody on the team and kind of kills everybody's their belief that they can do anything well this upcoming season. So we'll find out. But yeah, both teams had a turnover here, and Jared Goff, who was Jared Goff was overachieving in comparison to the roster that he was provided with. So to try and sit here and say that, I've been seeing stuff in the Lions Reddit that they want somebody else who's on the bench for the Lions as their backup, blah, out there. Literally, his name is Blah. To come out there and sub into the game. You guys or come out there and become the starter because they don't believe in Jared Goff, which, by the way, like, congratulations, I guess. I didn't know Lions fans were in a position to be picky about who's playing quarterback for them. But hey, here we go. That's 34-11. I'm going to move on and talk about a far more interesting game. The game that had quite possibly some of the best trash talk. Like, once again, the game is more about this specific narrative than it is about the final score in this one. I'll tell you what it is. Packers 24, Bears 14. This is the epitome of what I thought to be the case of everybody's trying to push this idea about Aaron Rodgers, and he just keeps giving you evidence that shows that the exact opposite is happening. Everybody is convinced that Aaron Rodgers is just suffering and dredging himself through this entire season. They're convinced that because he's not on another team, he hates this entire team, he hates the organization, he hates the city of Green Bay, Wisconsin, when he has made it very clear who he does not like. It is the general manager of the team that he is a part of. That does not mean that he doesn't like his team. That does not mean, and a lot of you guys went out there after that really weird loss to the Saints, which, by the way, as weeks go on, looks weirder and weirder, right? Like, that loss to the Saints looks even stranger as they get further and further away from it. You're kind of like, man, Jameis was on one that day. The Chaos King, really, because that was that weird game where he had like 4 passing touchdowns, but like 100 and something yards. He had like the fewest passing yards per touchdowns thrown in NFL history, which of course is the most Chaos King Jameis Winston thing of all time, right? So that being said, a lot of people are convinced that Aaron Rodgers hates his team. He said that he doesn't like the general manager and how the team is run. That has been what he has said, and that is everything that we've seen. They had that loss versus the Saints, and everybody was convinced that he was trying to tank, which, by the way, they didn't explain. Like, if you just took 10 seconds beyond the logic of, like, oh, Aaron Rodgers is going to go out there and make the Packers fans suffer and tank this season. Well, like, if Aaron Rodgers tanks this season, he will be giving the Packers a great draft pick for the following year. So, actually, if you're really on the ball, if you're really using the big brain moves, You'd be like Aaron Rodgers going out there trying to win every single game that he possibly can so that, the Packers end up with like the 32nd pick, and he rides off into the sunset with the Super Bowl, and the Packers fans have to, curmudgeonly celebrate him one last time, and he's gonna leave and go possibly do that somewhere else. His success is the greatest revenge that he can get against the Green Bay Packers fans and everybody who's been really like honestly talking shit about him for months because they think that they know who Aaron Rodgers is, and every single thing that people say in comparison to what he does basically proves that they don't know anything about Aaron Rodgers, and I guess that's kind of the way he wants it to be. This is the epitome of that. Everybody's convinced that Aaron Rodgers is like not having fun, which is of course why he went out there and they like really like the score is deceptive in this situation for the Bears, right? But the fact of the matter is the epitome of having fun is being able to talk shit to people, right? If there was one thing that Aaron Rodgers likes about being the Green Bay Packer is going out and slaughtering the Chicago Bears every single opportunity he can. And that is why he ran up to the crowd and said, "I own you. I have always owned you my entire life." And quite frankly, for most of Aaron Rodgers' adult life, he has been the majority owner of the Chicago Bears franchise. That is correct. So, no surprise here, 24-14, and Justin Fields got hit a bunch again. Turns out, quarterbacks under pressure don't play all that well. Rookie quarterbacks under pressure play even worse. Who would have thought? Colts versus Texans. I'm not going to waste too much time on this one. For the second time this season, the Houston Texans have had a 4-turnover game, and the score reflects that. 31-3 was the final score. I would like to point out, this means that the Texans had the biggest margin of defeat this season. Do not, in comparison to what was going on with the Bengals and Lions, 34-11, 31-3. So the Texans, hands down, by the scoreboard, were the worst team in the NFL this week. I'm sure that really enthralled a lot of people. But yeah, the Colts went out there against a bad football team that's led by a rookie quarterback and killed it. But yeah, Nico Hollins is back for the Texans, and combined with Brandon Cooks should be pretty good. A lot of rumors are swirling around about how the Texans are going to be big sellers for the upcoming trade deadline and all that, whatever that means in the span of this team, because they seem like they are trying to get some kind of mix of veteran players and get all the younger players that they've drafted or recently drafted as much time as they possibly can out there on the field to make something happen, to figure out if these guys can play or figure out how these guys are going to fit into this system. And I will say it's definitely not looking like Dave Culley is going to get fired after just 1 year as the head coach of the Houston Texans, which is going to be nice, because if there was anybody that needs to get fired, it would be the person that would be firing Dave Culley. But anyway, 4 turnovers. You lose the game almost every single time, unless you're the team that we're about to talk about here in a second. But they are not. Guess what? The Texans and the Chiefs are two very different teams in two very different places. Yeah, Colts beat the Texans, annihilate them. Not surprised at all. Defense went out there, ran wild on them. Pressure was all over the place. Davis Mills got hit multiple times in the process of throwing the ball, and the offensive line has really struggled. I don't know, man. It's so hard to see. It's so hard to see like the other stuff that could possibly be going wrong that sets the offensive line up for absolute failure. I will say the play calling probably isn't helping. Moving on, Chiefs 31, Washington 13. This one, the epitome of deception, ladies and gents. The Chiefs had 29 first downs. The Washington football team had 15. Kansas City had 499 yards of total offense. Their defense generated 2 turnovers, and the final score was 31-13. Adding us all to, you add it all up, and you're just like, wow, the Chiefs went out there and kicked ass. And they obviously dominated this game, right? They dominated this game so hard, ladies and gentlemen, that this was a one-possession game until early in the fourth quarter when the score was 24-13 at that point. The Chiefs had 3 They dominated so well, the Chiefs had 3 turnovers, and they were all kind of weird, to be honest with you. One was a bobbled pass by Tyreek Hill that landed in the hands of Kyle Fuller. The other one was Patrick Mahomes while on third and one, ladies and gents. A low snap, trying to scoop the snap up, running. He ran to the right-hand side. Multiple Washington football team players were taking him down while he threw a ball 20 yards up into the air, and it was intercepted by Bobby McCain, right? The other one was a wide receiver fumble, which is damn near impossible to pull off somehow. But every single week I find myself saying it's damn near impossible to pull off. But it happens so frequently, maybe it's not as difficult as I think it is. But yeah, a wide receiver fumble and 2 weird interceptions, to be honest with you, is how they got these turnovers. But nonetheless, turnovers are turnovers. Anyway, the Washington defense showed up against some poor offensive line play from the Chiefs throughout the course of this game. And it's kind of wild how Washington ran the ball so little, especially considering how close the game was vast majority of the game. They had 39 pass attempts with Taylor Heineke to the 19 rush attempts overall, and that's a team that has Antonio Gibson and J.D. McKissick, right? So they have like legitimate guys that they can depend upon as running backs. And you can talk about like, oh man, like the run game doesn't work. Like for the sake of balance to help Taylor Heineke, and he needs every single ounce of help that he can possibly get to keep the defensive lineman off his back. As you can tell throughout the course of that game, he got, I think it was like double-digit pressures that Chiefs were able to pull off in this game, and they're not like one of the best D lines in the NFL, right? So and I think Sam Cosmi missed this game. Like, we talked about how they had so many injuries that it was going to affect their ability to even be able to function as an offense, and 2 of their 5 starting offensive linemen didn't play in this game, and it showed. It showed at multiple points throughout the course of it. But yeah, you can't beat the Chiefs doing this kind of stuff. So there were 12 drives in total for the Washington football team. 6 of them were drives that were 3 plays or less. So half of their drives in the course of this game were 3 and outs or worse. There was a 2-play drive that had an interception, and there was actually a 1-play drive that was a turnover as well. But yeah, so and this is just to kind of give you a glimpse of like what I'm talking about. So the second half of this game, the Washington football team ran 20 plays in total, 20 offensive plays in total. The Chiefs ran 44. That's what I'm talking about. You can't beat them like that. Speaking of teams you can't beat like that, the Chargers came into this matchup versus the Baltimore Ravens as the worst run defense in the NFL. And it showed on the scoreboard. Everybody who runs the ball for the Ravens scored a touchdown in this game, 34-6, and then combine that with the fact that it put pressure on the LA Chargers to go out there and really throw the ball all over the field because the Ravens defense was doing such a good job of stopping their ability to run the ball, the Chargers' ability to run the ball. They actually forced them to become a one-dimensional offense, and it unraveled this game, basically, for the Chargers. Justin Herbert was under heavy pressure. There was multiple times he was off his mark in terms of throwing the receivers. His thing seems to be like throwing to the inside on curl routes, which is never a good sign. But the Ravens were able to take a ton of time off the clock, and then combine that with the fact that right now, Lamar Jackson is playing like the second-best quarterback in the NFL, and that's naturally right behind Kyler Murray, of course, right? So he's out there just balling out of control on this one, and it shows itself overall. He had under 200 passing yards in this game. The Baltimore Ravens defense got 3 shutout quarters in this matchup. They got the Chargers got a touchdown, and then did not get the PAT. So that's the only scoring that they had in this entire game. It was kind of wild to think about, to see them get really done up like that. So the Ravens had almost 40 minutes of time of possession, and the Chargers had just a little bit over 20. So yeah, it was bad, and it showed itself big time in this one. 187 rushing yards and 3 rushing touchdowns, ladies and gents. That is a Baltimore classic, and they put it on them like that. But yeah, that happened. 34-6, big game for the Ravens, big win for the Ravens to follow up what happened on Monday Night Football versus the Colts to once again put them in a position to win the AFC North, especially with the way that the Browns have been playing. We'll talk about that in a little bit as well. The Rams took on the Giants. I'm not going to hold you. 38-11 was the final score in this one. There were so many people out and hurt for the Giants that there was no way that they were going to be competitive in this one. The Rams are a high-quality football team, and the best side of their play is the I would say the worst side for the Giants, and that's the offense. So 38-11 was the final score. They went out there and they did their thing. Daniel Jones he tried. I'm surprised they let him play the entire game, to be honest with you, because at a certain point, he was already hurt to begin with. He had the concussion protocol stuff going on. We got better things that we can be doing, ladies and gents. We got other things that we can be doing besides having Daniel Jones play late minutes versus the Rams while they're getting tuned up. Vikings, Panthers, this is one of the weirdest games of all of the noon games on this one. So the final score in this one was 34-28. Sam Darnold, in this game, Sam Darnold's first pass was picked off by Rashad Breeland, who, by the way, has been thriving since he left Kansas City. The Vikings defense was swarming all game. They had 4 sacks in total. They got 15 pressures in this one, and a lot of that was actually based off of my understanding of what I saw was based off of the high-quality coverage that the Vikings had down the field. So, Sam Darnold's intended air yards calculated by Pro Football Reference, shout out to those guys, 423 yards intended. Between all the drops that the wide receivers had and the pressures that were thrown in this game, he got 207 of those. So he got less than 50% of the intended air yards that he was going for. He completed 17 passes in the course of this game. He was not having a good time. The Panthers played about as poorly as you think they could, and they were still in it at the end of the game because of some really freak stuff. They had a punt that they blocked that turned into a touchdown for them, and like we said before, they had they had a heavy splash of defense early on in the game. The defense really let them down in the back half of it, but nonetheless, the Vikings scored with 4 minutes left in the first quarter, and then didn't get another point until 6 minutes and 49 seconds left in the third. That's what I mean. Like that's a product of not only poor Vikings offense, but on top of that, some high-quality Panthers defense, which we've seen throughout the course of this season. If there's one thing that is for real about the Panthers, while the offense has been struggling or Sam Darnold's been looking very, very bad at his job, the Panthers defense has been on point. And going back to what I said before about who did I reference? Anyway, the Vikings had 16 drives in this one. Half of them were 4 plays or less. They had one of these 4-play drives they actually scored a touchdown off of. Everything else was turned over. So left in the third. Like I said before, they didn't score until 6 minutes and 49 seconds left in the third quarter. 8 of the 16 drives that the Vikings had were 4 plays or less. That's not a winning formula. There's a lot of things about each one of these teams in the course of this game that you're just like, how do you win football games like that? And the answer is you really don't, unless you're playing another team that's actually that much more offensively inept than you are. So Robbie Anderson has to be really sick after this game. Last week he had the situation where he kind of lost it on the sideline, and when asked about it in the press conference, he talked about how it was about passion and about he was upset that the coaches weren't giving him routes that he could run to kill the corner that was up against him because he was sitting down on his routes and he felt like he could have ran double moves that would have got him wide open plays and all that kind of jazz like that. Robbie Anderson also came out here and dropped the ball 3 times. He got hit smack dab in the face mask on a crossing route during while the Panthers were just outside the red zone on a potential game-tying drive. I will say he got some redemption a couple plays later because he caught the game-tying touchdown that helped set up the game-tying 2-point conversion, which looked pretty easy for the Panthers. If there is one team in the NFL that looks like they are dominant inside of the red zone, it is the Panthers, because when it comes they have the ability to run and pass the ball. Sam Darnold used his legs a bunch in the course of this game, and that showed itself, especially on the final drive that was in regulation. They forced it into overtime. Sam Darnold also on the 4th and 6th play that was the 4th and 6th play that was set up because of Robbie Anderson dropping the ball on a crossing route. There's no guarantee that he was going to end up getting the first down on the crossing route, but it felt like he was pretty wide open. He had some good separation from his corner and everything like that. He could have turned upfield, possibly could have gotten a bunch of other yards as well, but nonetheless, they set up a 4th and 6, and instead of going for a stick route at the actual first down stick, Sam Darnold looked upfield, got the ball to DJ Moore, floated it in there, dropped it into the breadbasket ever so lightly, and DJ Moore just ran out of bounds, gave him an opportunity to go out there and get a touchdown. Absolutely amazing, especially considering the rough day that Sam Darnold had where the Panthers had 4 turnovers in this one. For him to be able to feel comfortable enough to go for that with DJ Moore as the intended receiver shows a lot of resilience, which I think may be a product of his years past where mistakes were not able to be punished because they couldn't put anybody else in for him. But yeah, there's something to be said there. The Panthers went out there, they competed very, very well in basically the fourth quarter, and the defense played really well the first half. They set the offense up in the second half of this game. And then the Vikings, because of the efforts of Adam Thielen and Justin Jefferson, who were killing the corners for the Panthers throughout the course of this game, they came up with a couple of clutch plays and got into overtime. And then Kirk Cousins you want to talk about how savage Sam Darnold was on that game-tying drive. Kirk Cousins threw a game-winning touchdown in this game, and I think he's tied for like the most game. I think he's got like 18 game-winning drives in the past like 5 years or something like that. So, but yeah, he went out there and did the thing. The Vikings get the dub. Final score in this one, 34-28. Vikings in OT after a touchdown pass from Kirk Cousins in overtime to finish it off. The Cardinals took on the Browns. This one was interesting. So, the final score is 37-14, and So, you tell me how you feel about this. Well, hit me up in the chat. Let me, by the way, I should probably be checking the chat at some point instead of just rambling on forever. But yeah, there's a lot to be said about this game in terms of how it was won. There's a lot to be said about this game in terms of how... There's a lot to be said about this game in terms of what happened in the course of it, because there were things that led up to the absolute failure that happened for the Browns, and there are things that definitely weighed heavy on how this is going to shake out. So we'll get down to I'll just tell you what my perspective on it was, because I feel like it's kind of incomplete to a certain degree as to how this was all supposed to shake out. So let me just put it like this. The Browns only scored twice in this game, and one of them was a Hail Mary catch. If you didn't see it, it was a Hail Mary catch by Donovan Peoples-Jones from Michigan. A lot of people have been saying that he's actually been playing a lot better since Jarvis Landry's been out, and he's actually a big-body wide receiver, kind of on the same level of Odell Beckham Jr., who has been getting more looks as the season has gone on since he's been back from his injury and everything like that. But yeah, that touchdown catch was like right at halftime, and it gave kind of a little bit of hope that this game was going to be relatively close, because I think it was at 23-14 was the score after this Hail Mary catch. For the Browns, their injury situation really piled up in this game. They came into this game without Nick Chubb. They ended this game without Kareem Hunt. They also had multiple defensive backs. I think Denzel Ward didn't play in this one as well. Didn't play in this game as well. There were multiple defensive backs who went down before the game started and during the game, right? So that changes the makeup of a defense that basically has to be on point to be able to compete with the Cardinals on a regular basis. And then combine all those situations with the fact that the first 4 possessions for the Browns were, as read, a punt, a turnover on downs, a fumble, and an interception. By the way, that turnover on downs was Odell Beckham Jr. on a 4th and 6, slightly bobbling on an inside slant, and could actually, if he had caught it and kept in stride, would have been like maybe a yard short of a touchdown. So that's like one of those situations, right? Like, it's so close. The thin line between a great play and a bad play is the width of a blade of grass sometimes. But yeah, so we got 3 turnovers in the first 4 possessions of the game versus the number 1 offense in the NFL that really doesn't need your help in terms of scoring. And that's what did them in. There's no question about it. The Browns quarterbacks were under pressure throughout the course of this game because the Cardinals got up so early that the passing game became like the only way that they could really get back into it big time, even though and combine that with the fact that they don't have Nick Chubb, so they can't just run Kareem Hunt like he's a solo back the entire time. They have Demetrius Jones. I should probably know his name. I picked him up on fantasy. But also Dearness Johnson, who's apparently going to be getting carries this week as well, because they play on Thursday Night Football. So if things could not get worse, they are getting worse for the Browns very, very quickly. And I think right now this is a team that when, we're talking 5 weeks from now, we're going to look back on this and be like, oh, well, yeah, I think this is kind of a product of the situation, right? And we'd like to imagine they're going to be a better team. Baker Mayfield has a shoulder injury, so they don't even finish this game with their starting quarterback. So they start the game without their number 1 running back in Nick Chubb. They lose their number 2 running back. They lose their starting quarterback in the course of this game as well, and they lose defensive backs before the game starts and how this one ended. So they not only got beat down 37-14, but they went and lost a bunch of players to make things happen. This is like the worst case scenario for the Browns when this game was all said and done. It didn't come down to a game-winning drive with Baker Mayfield, who, by the way, made some great plays under pressure. Like I said, they had 15 pressures in the course of this game. Case Keenum had to finish this one off, and he's actually going to be starting on Thursday Night Football for the Browns. But they had 2 forced fumbles and then the Baker shoulder injury. One of the forced fumbles was because I think it was J.J. Watt got a sweet hustle tackle or whatever, took Baker Mayfield down, and Baker's whole elbow like went into the ground first and then forced itself up in through his shoulder, and of course probably put it into a bad spot. We've all been there before. But yeah, that was it was worst case scenario for the Browns, and then the Cardinals went out there and they did what they normally do, man. They've got too many good wide receivers to be kept under wraps for a long period of time. So it comes down to the ability to not only get pressure, but on top of that, once you get pressure, be able to counter Kyler Murray's rollout ability, right? So the offensive line can do they can do a high quality job, but there has to be somebody out there to force Kyler when he's under pressure to look down towards the pressure, and that hasn't happened yet because he has so much belief and faith that his wide receivers are open downfield. And guess what, guys? It just got a lot worse because Zach Ertz is on the team now. So no need to be alarmed. Undefeated team. Only undefeated team left in the NFL. Other stuff. Raiders Broncos 34-24 was the final score in this one. This was very strange in the sense that the Broncos had a potential game-winning drive going on. At one point, they recovered an onside kick, and then that drive was ended subsequently because of an interception from Teddy Bridgewater. Because guess what, guys? It's all good because that was just one of 4 turnovers that the Broncos had in the course of this game. So, if there was one thing that did them in, I will point this out. This is my vibe about this game. That looked like the Raiders. That's a bad win for the Raiders because they got 4 extra possessions because of their ability to generate the turnovers. And this is a stat that I saw. One of the beat reporters for the Raiders tweeted this out. He said the Raiders had 7 pass plays that gained 25-plus yards yesterday. That's the most 25-plus yard plays passing plays in a game in the NFL. According to Sports Radar, the database back to 1991. So basically, I was born in 1992. So that's the most 25-plus yard plays in 30 years in the NFL. No one has even had 6 since the Lions in 2015 versus the Bears. So, and the Raiders' high that they've ever had of 25-plus yard passing plays was 4 versus the Falcons in 2012. So, like I said before, the Raiders look like they got a bad win in this one because this one should have been a lot further away. I will say, for as much as the turnovers played a big factor in this game, Teddy Bridgewater played very, very well. He had a lot of moments where he threw some dimes. He had a lot of moments where he distributed the ball very well, but the fact of the matter is, like, the first turnover they had was and this is still confusing to me. I couldn't tell if you go back and look at it, there was basically 2 tight ends on the left-hand side. One ran a short curl route, and the other one ran a curl route that was like 20 yards downfield for some reason. In the course of that happening, Teddy Bridgewater throws it. They're both down the same line on the field, if you know what I'm talking about. And they're both down the same angle that the quarterback would be seeing. So the guy who ran the short curl route reached for the ball. And you couldn't tell if the ball was high for the short guy or if it was on target for the 20-yard curl route. But by the time, because of the interference from the short guy touching the ball on the curl route, because of that interference, it slowed down the ball and it changed its trajectory to the inside of the curl route, which is where the DB was, and it forced the turnover. So that's not even an interception on Teddy Bridgewater. That's just, I guess you could say, in terms of like throwing selection, or maybe because of the way the route was run or something like that, but because of his throw being tipped, it turned into a turnover for the Broncos, and of course it wasn't a product of Teddy's throw. So that's one of the turnovers that they had, but nonetheless, I feel like the Raiders didn't play all that well. They took advantage of a lot of extra opportunities to score the ball, and you're not going to have too many 4 turnover play games. So trying to depend upon those is absurd, right? And they went out there and they won a game where they had 4 turnovers by 10 points. And the Broncos, like I said before, they got the ball on an onside kick, and they got their final turnover on that last drive that the Broncos had. So it was a rough one. It was a rough one for the Broncos because you could argue that was a very winnable game that got thrown away on multiple occasions. But yeah, and a fumble as well. Cowboys versus Patriots. This one was a barn burner. Probably the best game of the entire week, to be honest with you, next to Bills Titans on Monday Night Football. 35-29 was the final score. 35 points for the Dallas Cowboys, who have gone out here and they looking pretty good, ladies and gents, looking pretty good. So this one was really impressive on the Patriots side because it felt like Mac Jones was going back and forth with Dak Prescott. And on top of this, and I know this may sound weird, for as much offense as the Cowboys put up, and they put up numbers on this Patriots defense. Actually, the Patriots defense gave up the most yardage that any Patriots defense has ever surrendered under Bill Belichick. So, you know, that happened, and this was still a one-possession game that had to go into overtime. So I would call that a win. Nonetheless, Cowboys, Patriots, 35-29 in this one. And the most impressive part that you got to take out of this one is Mac Jones has a tendency to almost match the skill level of the quarterbacks that he's playing against, or the offense that he's playing against. And I don't know if that's like a situational thing where like the game planning is so good or the play calling is so good and Mac Jones is just going out there and taking what's open, or if it's Mac Jones like legitimately stepping up to the plate when challenged by better teams to try and go out there and get the dub and get the win, because that's something you would not, that's a skill set, that's an ability that you would not expect out of a quarterback who was the QB for Alabama, right? Like at any point. Nonetheless, that's pretty impressive when it's all said and done. They get a loss in this one, and maybe that's just. And the other question I had about this is like, at some point, are the Patriots going to become a team that's able to finish games that are like this, right? This came down to a defensive play. CeeDee Lamb got a killer catch on the back half of a play where they sent a blitz to Dak Prescott, which, by the way, for whatever you have to say, Dak Prescott did a really good job of avoiding a lot of the pressure that the Patriots were able to throw at him throughout the course of the game, and then burn them because of the extra people, the extra man or extra people they sent on those blitzes, meaning that the coverage was thinner downfield against guys like Wilson, who has been lighting it up. On top of that, they have Michael Gallup coming back at some point this season, Amari Cooper, Tony Pollard, Ezekiel Elliott, and CeeDee Lamb. Like, there's just too many good guys for you to stay in coverage with for a long period of time. But that's what happened in this one. Gotta say, I'm really impressed with what the Patriots have been able to do, especially considering, a lot of people were expecting them to come out here and be like a lockdown stalwart defense, and they've actually shown some ability, some skill on offense as well. Other stuff. This was Sunday Night Football, and I'm sorry if you watched the entirety of this game. It was pretty boring. Ben Roethlisberger completed 19 of his short passes, which are the short passes are defined by 10 yards and under, or 9 yards and under, for 138 yards and a touchdown. That is the most completions without an incompletion in the since 2016, according to Next Gen Stats in the NFL. So, yeah, they've completely changed their offense to make sure that Ben Roethlisberger doesn't have to throw the ball downfield. And if that's it, guys, that's like legit what happened on Sunday Night Football. The Seahawks have had struggles in terms of the secondary downfield. You saw Jamal Adams have 2 interceptions bounce off of his hands and his helmet in the course of this game, because the Seahawks got better and better at predicting what the what the Steelers were going to be able to do. But the fact of the matter is like, without Najee Harris had I think he had like 38% of the yards, total yards, rushing yards and passing yards for this entire game. And that is not that's not gonna function like later on in the season, right? Like when they go up against teams that have better secondaries or better quarterbacks. Because like Geno Smith, for whatever you have to say about him, he did a killer job at the quarterback position. He went out there and did the damn thing. But the fact of the matter is that they're going to face better starting quarterbacks than Geno Smith this season. And they had to go into overtime to beat Geno Smith. And it took a freak play from TJ Watt coming in and getting a strip sack to get the ball back and win the game. So that's just not going to work for them. They did get a win. They played high-quality defense throughout the course of that game. But TJ Watt with the flex of the century, man. He was taking on a double team and was able to see that Geno Smith was running to the front of the pocket, ran up and covered that distance in less time than Geno Smith did climbing the pocket, right? And was able to strip that ball out. That was clutch, man. The Bills versus the Titans, that was Monday Night Football, and this is the last game of the breakdown here. The Titans killed the Bills' nickel coverage in this one. So the scheme was, this is the game. The Titans go out there, they have Julio Jones, A.J. Brown, and then they run whoever else it may be. Chester Rogers in some situations. They've got other wide receivers. They put 3 wide receivers out there. They force you into nickel coverage, which means, for those of you who are unindoctrinated, 5 cornerbacks out there, or 5 defensive backs out there on the field. And for the case of the Titans, as this game went on, it became 5 defensive backs truly, because they had safeties playing corner. But hey, this is about the Titans offense. Nonetheless, forced him into nickel coverage. The Bills secondary has been on point this entire season, but the fact of the matter is that fifth defensive back is taking the place of a bigger, bulkier linebacker that can go out there and make tackles against guys like Derrick Henry. So this is how the hustle works. You get the 5 defensive backs out there. You set up the motion for A.J. Brown or Julio Jones to try and identify what the coverage is. And Ryan Tannehill has the ability to call audibles right from the line of scrimmage. But for the most part, they're going out there, they're going to run the ball because it's going to be a light box, because the defensive backs are going to be carried downfield due to Julio Jones and A.J. Brown being massive wide receivers. And, of course, they'll draw attention from the safeties, which means that it becomes man-on-man in terms of the line of scrimmage, offensive versus defensive line, and then linebacker versus Derrick Henry, and the linebackers are not fast enough to keep up with Derrick Henry, and the fast people, the defensive backs, are not strong enough to keep up with Derrick Henry, and you just do that all night. And when they start trying to key it, and when they start trying to load the box up, and you can see it multiple times on the broadcast, they would drop down a safety like Micah Hyde into the box or whatever, or 10 yards, which is 2 yards outside of the quote-unquote box, right? And they would have them kind of float in between the middle of the field. And when that would happen, they would cook them with Julio Jones and A.J. Brown, or another wide receiver, typically A.J. Brown. Got a message in the chat. Hey, sports, is today going well? I guess sports is going well. There's NBA games on. Anyway, that's how they cook them. That's the hustle, ladies and gents. A.J. Brown, Julio Jones are too good to be left in single coverage. So when they're further down the field, safeties attract to them, and it opens up more opportunities and more lanes for Derrick Henry to do the thing that tractors do. You build up steam, and you keep on rolling. And when I say roll, I mean roll over defensive backs. You saw that happen multiple times. The Titans ran a bunch of 4 wide receiver sets, which would mean that Derrick Henry becomes the 5th wide receiver. He runs his swing route. You throw the ball to Derrick Henry, and guess what? He's out in open space, which is every single person, regardless of the amount of pounds that you weigh. It is their nightmare. It is their living nightmare. Anyway, that's what happened in this situation. The Buffalo Bills, by the way, killed the Titans on defense. Like there were so many times the wide receivers are just wide open. I will give the credit where it is due. The offensive and defensive line for the Titans probably played some of the best football they've played all season in this matchup versus the Buffalo Bills. Later on in the season, later on in the game, Kevin Byard started playing really well at the safety position, and on top, he got an interception. That helps a ton, especially when you're in a shootout back and forth with the Buffalo Bills. It came down to a 4th and 1 situation at the 3-yard line. They were obviously going for a QB sneak. A lot of people were really pissed off that they called a timeout before they snapped the ball on that one, but they needed to stop the clock. They were saying that that people were saying like, yo, you don't call a timeout and then go out there and show a different formation. Everybody knows you're going for a QB sneak. Well, guess what, guys? We all knew they were going for the QB sneak to begin with, right? It's 4th and 1 inside of the 5-yard line. They went light. They went heavy in terms of the wide receivers, which lightened out the box for the Tennessee Titans, which, by the way, and this is if there was ever a cherry on top of a really good night for a defensive line, it is a superstar left tackle, or not superstar, a top-tier left tackle in Deion Dawkins, who missed a reach block on Jeffrey Simmons, the best defensive lineman for the Tennessee Titans, who was a defensive tackle. He was lined up at defensive end to the inside shoulder of Dawkins. He sees that, and by the way, you talk about reading body language, right? He knows one of two things is happening, and he kind of can sell out on the other one as soon as he sees one thing happen, right? So they have 5 offensive linemen. There are 4 defensive linemen for the Tennessee Titans up front and 2 linebackers behind them. Everybody else is a DB lined up on a wide receiver. Across the front, you see the 3 defensive linemen lined up heavily to the left on Josh Allen's side, right? Josh Allen is underneath center, so it turns into a 3-on-3 situation to a certain degree. Center has to get the person that's directly in front of him. The guard helps out for a second on the person in front of them. No, sorry, it was there was 2 to the left of the center and 2 to the right of the center. The guard in the center double teamed the quote unquote defensive tackle that was in front of the center to get upfield, and Jeffrey Simmons, patient but quick at the same time, is one of the weird things that defensive linemen can do, right? He's lined up to the inside shoulder of the tackle, and as soon as the ball is snapped, he's patient enough to wait for the guard to clear out and take on the defensive tackle that's in front of the center, and then quick enough to explode in that window, and Dawkins was not able to get that reach block in enough time to control Simmons as he jumped and was able to force not only Josh Allen to go against the grain of his own blocks on a QB sneak, but to prevent him from being able to fall forward for yards, and it stuffed him on 4th and 1, and it won the game for the Tennessee Titans. That's clutch. That's clutch. I've not seen a defensive performance like that from the Titans because, quite frankly, the final score, they still, you can talk about how they gave up a bunch of points, but compared to like what the Bills have done to everybody else, that's the most I've seen them struggle, especially in the back half of a game. So it was really interesting to see that overall. And on that note, ladies and gentlemen, I'm calling it a night. I got a bunch of other stuff I got to go do. I got to go check on my sick girlfriend. I got to go say bye to, well, not bye, but like hang out with the people that I used to work with. Other than that, we are out of here, ladies and gents. Make sure you tuned in for Friday. I've decided we're going to start doing it on Friday. Make sure you're tuned in for the Broke Boy Sports Podcast. It's just our regular episode where we talk about everything in sports, not just the NFL. If you liked or disliked this episode of the podcast, make sure you let me know on Apple Podcasts. You can rate it and review it or whatever. Let me know what I can do to improve on it or whatever. All that jazz like that. Hit me up on Twitter at FB_playbook, Instagram at The Ashton Forever. You can listen to the podcast on Spotify, iHeartRadio, watch on YouTube, watch on Twitch, listen on Apple Podcasts, on Google Podcasts, on Deezer, on Podchaser. Yes, all of those places have access to the one, the only Broke Boy Sports Podcast. I will leave you like I have the last couple of, well, I guess I would say over a year and a half, almost 2 years now. Wash your hands, wash your ass, and if you have the ability to, wash your entire body, please. Like, legs included. Certain people. Anyway, I'm out. Go home, Roger. Yo, everybody on Twitch and YouTube, shout out to you. Appreciate y'all tuning into the show as always. That's all I got. That's really all I got. Shout out to y'all for hopping in before the show starts and waiting around while I do stuff. Anyway, like and subscribe. Hit that smash that notification bell to know when we go live. I'm out. Later.